Good evening all, and welcome. Tonight I have a collection of ghost and paranormal stories for you all, so buckle up because it's time to get comfortable and let the darkness take control. I live in an apartment that was built in 1989. Let me just go over the layout because it's important. It's a pretty standard place, but it has a loft, and it's a bit cramped. I don't really like it. I find it kind of creepy. There's a certain sense of vulnerability that comes with having a loft, which I can't quite explain, but by the end of the story, you'll understand why it frightens me. It all started with a feeling one night after work. I hadn't been able to shift this feeling, and as soon as I came through the door, the first thing I see as I enter the apartment is my loft, and I get the feeling that something was watching me from up there. At first, I just thought it was my tired mind conjuring up something. You know, this has happened before when you get tired, but this time, it felt different. Little did I know a grudge was born that day. When you're in the bed in the loft, you naturally look out and down and see the entryway leading to the kitchen. So naturally, when I sleep on my side, and therefore I face the entryway to the kitchen. Sometimes before sleep comes for me, I get the strong feeling that someone is looking at me, staring at me from down there in the entryway. In uneasy times like that, I try to read or get myself to sleep as soon as possible. I hit the light so I don't get distracted and just use a little nightlight near my pillow to read my book. However, one night, a deep sense of unease crept over me. I felt as if something was wrong. I heard a noise coming from down below. The lights were off down there. I listened carefully, and it sounded as if someone was exhaling. It definitely sounded like breathing. The second my mind understood that I was hearing breathing, I stayed deathly still. I was completely terrified. My heart began thundering in my chest as I thought there was an intruder in the house. The air in the room felt heavy and oppressive, and it enveloped me. It was all around me. The room seemed to grow darker, and I felt strange. I could still hear the noise. It resounded around the room below, and it sounded closer. Beneath the loft, you see, there was a blind spot, but I felt as though I'd pinpointed the spot where the breathing sound was coming from. Someone was certainly down there, with their back against the wall. I managed to convince myself of that. When I imagined that, I shuddered, drew my shoulders up to my chin and held my covers tight. It was like a stalemate. I couldn't do anything, and the feeling that there was someone down there wouldn't go away. After a moment or two, the breathing suddenly stopped. I thought it was all over, and that I had imagined the whole thing, and relief washed over me. But then in that moment, I heard a familiar sound that I had heard many times before. It was the instantly recognizable sound of someone climbing the ladder which leads to the loft. It sounded exactly like someone was coming up towards me. I was frozen with fear, and again I was unable to move. My mind was a mess of fear and worry as I had heard the sound of someone climbing. But then clarity came to me swiftly. I made up my mind to deal with whoever was coming up, and I was certain that I would see someone's head emerge in a matter of seconds. Those seconds felt like hours. The tension was unbearable. Nothing came into view, and then the sound stopped. It stopped at the top of the ladder. If someone was on that ladder, I would have seen them. It sounded like whatever came up the ladder was now in the loft with me. I didn't know what the hell was going on. I was sure there wasn't an intruder in the house, and as soon as that thought crossed my mind, my nightlight went out and I was plunged into absolute darkness. Then, close to my ear, I heard 3 words which chilled me to my core. "Who are you?" I cannot remember much after this point. I must have fainted. It was morning when I awoke. I don't know why, but I don't really feel the need to pursue or search for meaning or an explanation to this experience. I'm debating whether or not I should move out. I feel like it could just be the beginning of something, and there's definitely something bad in my apartment, and I don't think I'll be able to stand it. If something happens again. Last year I moved home. I changed job in the autumn. At the time it was my 6th job change. It just wasn't working out. It didn't seem to ever work out back then, and I had less than a month to find somewhere to live before my job started, and it was in a new city. I didn't have much time, but I managed to arrange a viewing for 5 apartments that met my needs, and I was excited to see what they looked like in person. I knew it was going to be difficult, but at least I had a few options. One of the apartments that I arranged to view was the one my wife had high hopes for. She really liked it. The rent, the size, the age of the place and area all seemed fantastic. We really wanted it. It would be great for the new job too. A 5-minute walk to the station, and work was about a half-hour commute away. It seemed perfect. We wanted that one, but I felt like I needed to see the place in person and check out the area. Plus, I had 4 others to check out too. We were supposed to go and check out the apartment together, but we got some unexpected news. My wife was pregnant. I said that I would go alone so that she could have the morning to tell everyone, you know? I scheduled the viewing for the apartment we wanted the most at the end of the day, my last appointment. Well, I wasn't impressed with the first few apartments. They either made a mistake with the listing or weren't entirely honest with me. For example, the size of the apartment wasn't described for the first one, and the second one they said would be a 5-minute walk to the station, but it was a 25-minute walk at best. The other one was a bit weird. The photos on the website didn't match what it looked like in reality, but in person, the apartment looked like it had been dragged from the 80s. I didn't get why people couldn't be honest. It dampened my hopes for my final apartment viewing. I was getting a bit nervous. All our eggs were in this one basket now. I couldn't believe how much time I had wasted. Either way, it was the same real estate agent on each apartment viewing, and I had really grown to dislike him by this time when we reached the final appointment. I almost walked away. I hadn't ever experienced this kind of service before. He said something along the lines of, "Well, I guess you're nearly out of options, but I think this last apartment will meet your needs." I didn't care for his tone or jokey attitude. When we arrived, I noticed that the exterior of the building looked like it was a bit newer than as advertised. This real estate agent, seriously. It looked clean, and the realtor let slip that there was a cleaning crew who attended every week. It was a lot better than expected. The elevator was modern. The windows, they looked sturdy and safe, and it was looking good. Nice clear hallways, nothing piled up, that was good for us. And we used to have a neighbor who piled all kinds of junk in the hallway. Before I even looked inside the apartment, I had decided this was the one. I was getting good vibes. When I finally got in, I saw it had been freshly renovated. It was bright and clean, and I sent a picture to my wife of the cooker since I knew she was a fan of gas cookers rather than the electric types you often got in apartments, and she loved the look of the kitchen. Next, I saw the closets, and they were massive. I tried to take a bunch of photos, but most of them didn't work out properly. I had an old phone and tried to take pictures on my phone until I got a little embarrassing and just gave up. Finally, I saw a balcony, which looked amazing. It was nice and wide, and I saw myself drinking out there on summer evenings and my wife growing a few plants. As I opened the balcony door and stepped out onto the balcony, I felt something, an intense shiver, run through my body, and then my skin broke out in goosebumps. It was autumn, but it wasn't chilly. In fact, it wasn't a sunny day and there was no breeze. The feeling I felt was one of fear, rather than a change of temperature. Something wasn't right. I thought to myself, I'm not really sure I like this room. That moment, though, I thought that I suddenly felt a shove in my back. If it wasn't for the balcony railing, I would have gone tumbling over the 5 floors, and I would have perished. I instinctively turned to glare at the real estate agent, only to see him on the other side of the room. I knew he knew something. That was why he'd been setting me up with all the garbage apartments earlier. He wanted me to pick this one. He called out to me as if he were expecting it. "You alright, mate?" As if I had stumbled on the threshold to the balcony, which we both knew wasn't true. I know I didn't trip on anything, I was shoved. I didn't reply. What could I say? A moment or two passed and I thought to myself, well, I could have just been imagining things. Was I really going to turn down this dream apartment because I got goosebumps and potentially stumbled over something on the balcony? I decided to leave the apartment as calmly as possible. When I got outside, I made eyes with another resident on the same floor. It was a young woman. She appeared married by her ring. She locked eyes with me and shook her head slowly from side to side. I swear to God, if I could read minds, what I would hear would be her saying, "Stay out of there." I headed home to tell my wife about my disappointing and creepy experiences. She was annoyed. She said that we were about to miss our chance for a great apartment. She was really pissed for me not snapping it up. I kept telling her that there was just something off about that place and that we should keep looking for somewhere better. I started the search for somewhere new immediately, and during my search, I found a website that lists the histories of some properties. I searched for the apartment that I looked at where I felt the shove, and bingo, there it was. Someone had taken their life from jumping from that very balcony. I showed my wife, and for once she agreed that I did something good. I felt like we avoided something potentially dangerous. So much for the apartment we wanted. This happened before a national holiday, not too long ago. I didn't have school the next day, and that was always a huge cause for celebration. But I was kind of up late for my age. It was about 10:30. I was in high school back then. I'll just have to quickly explain my family dynamic because it will make sense later. When I was younger, my father sadly passed away, and my mum works all the time, and I live with my grandparents. That night my granddad was out, and my grandma was somewhere downstairs. I was studying for exams, high-pressure stuff I was supposed to care massively about for some reason. I was more interested in my music back then, to be honest. I used to listen to my tunes through my PSP, and I was taking a break from studying. Gotta give my eyes a rest. So I set down my PSP and leaned back on my chair and closed my eyes for a minute. I opened them and looked at my bedroom door. I noticed something in that moment that sent my head into a tizzy. It was this figure of a person who wasn't a family member, just this shadowy shape peering at me from around the door of the room across the hall. Across the hall was an empty room. There was no logical reason why that shadow should be cast in that room at all. At first I thought that my mum or grandma had left the window open to air out the house, and I was seeing a very human-looking curtain position, or said curtain being caught on the balcony or something. It seemed highly implausible though, especially since the way it was, it appeared to be leering around the door to look at me. It was no trick of the light. I watched that shadow then emerge from the spare room and enter the hallway. It was like it was fixated on me. Even though it was dark, I could tell by the movements of that thing that it was facing me. It crept around the door, into the hallway with its back against the door on the hallway wall. I then watched it as it slowly backed off towards the stairs, and before I could see it descend the stairs, it disappeared. Here's the weird thing. It looked like it was the same height as me, and by its silhouette, it looked like it had the same hair and clothes I had on. It's quite challenging to explain, really. Now, like I said, it was just my grandma and I in the house at the time. She didn't go upstairs much because she has bad hips, but if it was her, I would recognize her silhouette, and surely she would hit a light or something. I was left there in my chair shuddering, trying to understand what I had just witnessed. What does it mean? Something that kind of looked at me was looking at me from the other room? Why? For what purpose? Was this some kind of spirit or a shadow person? Did it leave because I spotted it? What would have happened if I didn't notice its presence? I was just horrified. When my brain searched for a logical answer and came back with none, it was just terrifying. I began to freak out and then thought, oh God, what if it returned? I didn't want to go downstairs because that would be the last place I saw that thing head off to, and I still have no idea what the hell it was, and I've lived in that house right until I moved out in fear that I would see the shadowy figure again, but thankfully, until now I haven't. I did wonder if it could have been a home intruder. I was young, but I'm not sure. I might have seen some features of the invader or their clothes, but I didn't. I never told anyone in my family about what happened that night because I would worry that they would laugh at me and call me weak, and I didn't want my mum to worry about me when she was out working so many hours. I do wonder if they would have believed me sometimes. This happened when I was 26 years old. I was working at a pretty big company. I thought that I had it made, you know. I just graduated from university and had landed a really decent job, and I quickly realized that everything was not as it seemed. I tried to stick it out, but man, I hated that job. They took advantage of me. Every holiday request I put in was denied, and the hours were way longer than advertised. I saw no progression there, and everyone was horrible. I was exhausted and underappreciated, so I quit. I had to get another job pretty quickly if I wanted to afford rent, so I took a temp job in sales. It wasn't as stressful, and it wasn't as respectful, but I'd finally achieved a nice work-life balance. One thing I had to change, though, was my apartment. I used to live in a pretty swanky place downtown, but I could no longer afford that on the new job's salary, so I had to move somewhere a little cheaper. My new place was okay, I guess. I didn't really have much space, but it was decent enough. But then something strange happened. It happened when I was about a month and a half into my life at the apartment. I got home kind of late that night. I ran a bath and was heating up my dinner. I took my bath at around 11 p.m. and I was just relaxing. I had washed my hair and was feeling overheated. Since I lived alone, I had no issue to hop out the bath and run to the fridge to grab myself a cold drink. And that is exactly what I did. I opened the bathroom door and froze in place. I couldn't believe my eyes. There were wet footprints on the carpet. I was in the bath the whole time, and it wasn't raining that night, so I couldn't believe it. Those were not my footprints. The footprints led from the bathroom outwards into the lounge. I wrapped a towel around myself and cautiously followed the footprints. They went from the bathroom through the lounge into the hall and into my bedroom. They seemed to stop at my bed. At first I thought, oh God, someone's broken in and they're hiding under my bed. So I carefully backed out of the dark bedroom and headed to the kitchen. I grabbed a knife from the kitchen to protect myself. I had no idea of what would come next. It was an incredibly tense and stressful situation, but I knew I had to react. I had to do something. I summoned all of my courage, stormed into my bedroom, hit the lights, and looked under the bed. But there was nothing but a pitch-black empty space staring back at me. No one was there. My heart was racing. I couldn't figure out what the hell was going on. I went to the door and checked that it was locked. It was locked, with the chain. There was no sign that it had been kicked in or tampered with at all. I was relieved, sure, but the mystery of the wet footprints wasn't resolved. I couldn't escape the fear of the unknown. What the hell was that? I went back to the bathroom, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. I quickly rinsed my hair off. Man, that was a horrible few seconds. I dried my hair with the back to the wall, terrified, yet trying to compose myself. I had to go to bed, but there was no way in hell I would be sleeping in the dark that night. I got into bed and surprisingly, I felt as though I wouldn't have much trouble sleeping. Perhaps I was more tired than I realized. I don't know how long I'd been asleep, but suddenly I woke up. I'm not sure if it was because I was sleeping with the lights on. I usually sleep in the dark, and it's always hard to stay asleep or fall asleep with the light on for me. It was like it was dark outside still. You know that feeling when you wake up in the middle of the night, and you feel as if it's morning but it isn't? I guess it was kind of like that. I had a faint sound coming from somewhere down the hallway. It was the sound of the bathroom opening. I gripped the covers as tightly as possible. My fingers must have been turning white from the pressure I was applying. I froze. I was praying that it was just my imagination, but I was wrong. I heard what sounded like footsteps next. The footsteps sounded sort of wet. Whatever that was, it was making that noise and left those footsteps while I was in the bath and now heading towards the bedroom. I guessed that they were coming towards me, just like the footprints I saw when I got out of the bath, to the lounge and through the hall and finally the bedroom. I cannot describe how terrifying that was. Hearing footsteps in my home coming from the bathroom, I knew that I was the only person in the apartment. I knew the doors were locked. I knew there was no one hiding as I had searched while armed, and the squelchy footsteps seemed to mock my belief in logic. They were absolutely unexplainable. They were paranormal. The footsteps didn't rush or move at what I would be describing as a normal pace. It was stilted and slow pace. At some points, I swear, it was as if 10 seconds had passed between each step, and I'm in bed, trying to rationalize everything, hoping that my brain can guide me to an explanation. I tried to believe that I was wrong. Maybe it was street noise or a neighbor, but in my heart, I knew I was wrong. Those footsteps were getting closer. My back was facing the bedroom door, and the covers were over my head. I could sense something approaching. If I'd have dared pop my head out of the safety of my covers, I swore I would have seen a breath of fog. All the while, the squelching footsteps are getting louder and louder, and I'm just laying in bed, screwing my eyes as tightly shut as possible. All the while, the squelching footsteps are getting louder and louder as I'm just laying in bed, screwing my eyes as tightly shut as possible. All I could do was shiver. The footsteps finally approached my bed, and I felt what I can only describe as a cold gaze fall on my back. I was very, very aware that I wasn't alone. I know this sounds hard to believe, but what can I say? A couple of agonizing seconds go by, and then something happens. The feeling of being glared at, the icy chill to the room, and the footsteps all went away. Then I heard the sound of something shuffling and maneuvering itself under my bed. The room was silent except for that one sound, and it sounded like something held its breath, as if to make itself comfortable under the bed. What could I do? I just stayed silent. I couldn't bear the tension, yet I couldn't summon the bravery to move. How long was I like that? I don't know. A minute? I say that because that minute is definitely longer than a minute. An hour? Half an hour? My perception of time was out the window. And then, a horrific sound filled the room. A terrible trill. I knew the sound and it came from my alarm clock. I set it to go off every morning at 6 a.m. and I hurriedly reached for my phone and turned the alarm off. I don't know why, but all I can say is that when I woke up, I guess I was asleep maybe. Anyway, when it was 6 a.m., I didn't think that there was a presence under the bed anymore. I took the plunge, leant over the side of the bed, my hair touching the ground, and peered into the space underneath. Again, there was nothing but darkness looking back at me. But I will say that the space underneath my bed did look a little damp. After that, I had to move out. It was hell. It wasn't ever as bad as that after that night, but on multiple occasions before I left, I heard doors open, drawers open, and the drip, drip, drip of water in the bathroom. I would love to know what happened in that apartment before I got there, but I'm not in a hurry to find out. It was terrifying enough. This happened when I was in elementary school, roughly 11 years old. My parents were called away urgently because one of my aunties or uncles were in need of some urgent childcare. I remember it was a Saturday and my parents planned to leave at dusk, and I was tasked with keeping an eye on my cousin since I was the eldest. I had a choice to go with my parents, and I wish I had, but it seemed more fun to stay at home with my cousins. The cousins in question were a 7-year-old boy and a 5-year-old girl. They were siblings. They kept nagging at me to go and play with them. I couldn't take it anymore and buckled to the persistent requests from my little cousins. The younger sibling demanded a game of hide and seek. I didn't mind that. I wasn't too cool for a game of hide and seek, and I thought that if I let them go and hide, I would have a couple of seconds peace while I counted down before I had to find them. I counted down from 50, and then I went to look for them. My male cousin, the older sibling, hid in a nearby wardrobe. He was easy to find. His sister, however, proved to be incredibly challenging. I couldn't really be bothered to search for every place in the house, so I thought if I called out to her, I would be able to find her. I walked around the house, asking out loud, "Are you ready?" And because she was little, and didn't really understand the premise of the game, she would enthusiastically answer, "Yes, I am." It sounded like she was hiding under the bed. I bent down as silently as I could and looked under the bed, but there was no one there. Strange. I called out again. "Are you ready?" Then I heard suppressed laughter coming from a wardrobe, a different one to the one I found my cousin in. So I threw the door open with a smile, but then found it empty. At this point, my cousin joined the hunt. She was a good hider, I'll give her that. We couldn't find her. After a few more minutes of searching, I began to get uneasy. I got a little scared, so I called out to her one more time. "I surrender, you win. Can you come out now?" I heard the bathroom door creak open and saw her smiling, victorious face. I just looked in the bathroom, though. It was pretty strange. I asked her outright where she had been hiding after she stopped celebrating her victory over me. "Ah, that's a secret," she replied. We decided to play a board game after that. All the while, I couldn't get my mind over what had just transpired. It was stuck in my head. Where the hell was she hiding? Later that night, my cousin's father came to pick up his children. Since the hour had grown late, I decided to go to bed myself. While in bed, I couldn't stop thinking about that game of hide and seek. I think I must have dozed off. I heard a voice. You know, like in a dream state, right before you plunge into a deep sleep, you're hovering on the edge of consciousness. It was in that moment when I heard something. When a voice from within my dark bedroom said, "Are you ready?" I jolted awake, like the feeling you have in the dreamlike state when you feel yourself falling. Then I heard it a second time. "Are you ready?" It was very faint, but I heard it. It was there. The voice didn't belong to either of my cousins. It wasn't a young voice. I covered myself from head to toe in my duvet and blankets. The voice sounded old. It sounded adult and female. And I heard it again. It sounded like it was getting closer, and my body started to involuntarily panic. My heart was thumping. "Are you ready?" I couldn't reply like my cousin did. I couldn't say, "Yes, I am." I didn't know what that would entail. I didn't want to know what would happen if I did that. I felt so scared and stressed, and I was still young, so the only logical answer that came to me was, "I'm not ready yet." I heard the old woman's voice whisper, somewhere close to my bed, in a voice as raspy as a mosquito. "Are you ready?" I felt as though I was about to be found in a game of hide and seek that I didn't even enter into. This was the moment. The duvet and blankets were vigorously thrown upwards from my head. I screwed my eyes as tightly shut as I could and let out the loudest scream I've ever heard. I fearfully opened my eyes after a few seconds and saw nothing but my dark and empty bedroom. I have no idea what the hell that was, and I stayed up until my parents got home, absolutely petrified. This happened when I was 19. It was when I was in my hometown visiting my parents. My parents live in the city, and it can be a bit of a pain in the ass to park at home sometimes. I often end up parking halfway down the street and walking there. On the night of this experience, I parked down the street and a little around the corner. I visited them, had dinner, caught up, and then said my goodbyes at around 10. So to get back to my car, I had to head down the street and through an alley. My car was parked just at the end of the alley. I got through the alley fine and back to my car. As I was about to go into my car, I noticed something in the alley. It wasn't dark enough for it to be pitch black out, and it was summer, so there was still some faint natural light out at the time. I saw something in the alley which appeared to be the shape of a person. It was heading down the alley towards me and my car. It was almost swaying. It was the strangest thing. Quite eerie, actually. It was twisting and wiggling. It didn't look normal at all. I thought that it was trouble, some kind of weirdo or something trying to distract me, and I decided to get into the car and get the hell out of there. That figure made me feel very uncomfortable. It's so hard to explain, so I just feel like asking a question at this point. Can humans look distorted? It's like he was glitching out, like it was a few frames behind real time. It sort of jiggled to the left and right. It was hard to make out because it was dark, but as soon as my eyes noticed that thing in the alley, it was pretty much unmissable. I strained my eyes and saw it. I saw that thing so clearly. I wish I got out of there sooner than I did, but I was almost hypnotized by the thing. When it reached the end of the alley, it was showered in the light of 2 streetlights. Only then, when it was fully illuminated, was I able to see what the thing was. And to be honest, I still have no clue what I saw that night, but I will try my best to explain it. It was completely pink, sort of skin tone. It looked like meat. That's all I can really describe it as. It was just some amalgamation of meat crudely shaped like a human. And a chill ran down my spine. I was overcome with fear and anxiety after seeing that. Even though I could have easily just as gone back to my parents' house, I decided to drive all the way home. It was like I was repelled. I needed to be so far away from it. I knew that just looking at it wasn't good enough. I knew that just looking away wasn't enough. It was innate. Some primal voice told me to get the hell away and fast. Something inside me told me that if I went back to my parents, then the thing would follow and get in somehow. I know I sound completely crazy, but that's how I felt. I had to get away, so I did. When I drove off, I looked in my rearview mirror and noticed that the thing from the alley wasn't pursuing me. It didn't make it any less terrifying, though. A few weeks later, I decided to pay my parents another visit. I guess this is because the incident in the alley was still on my mind. I actually decided to mention my experience to my mother, and I was surprised by the response I received from her. "Oh, so you saw that down the alley, right?" "Yeah, that's where I saw it." "It makes sense," she replied. "You've been away for a while, and you haven't heard, but the son of the Ishikawa family got hit by a car and passed away. Head-on collision, hit and run. Sorry to put it in a bad way like this, but maybe that's what you saw. A kind of manifestation of the poor guy." I was shocked, but I guess it kind of made sense. My mum has always said to me that she can see things. I think I got it from her. We often talk about the stuff we've seen. I don't know if my mother's theory is correct, but it's the only thing I have to go on. I don't really believe in the paranormal, but I do have a story to share. I'll let you make your own mind of it. One afternoon I was home alone. My wife was out running errands. I spent a lot of time home alone, so it wasn't unusual in any way. I was sitting up in my room on my computer, as I often was, scrolling through social media or watching videos, when I heard my wife come in through the front door. It sounded like she was carrying some plastic grocery bags from shopping. This was a pretty common occurrence as she loves making excuses to get out the house, and I'm more of a homebody. I got the notification on my phone that the kitchen had sensed movement. The doorway in the kitchen leads out to our entry hallway, so you can see people pass by the kitchen door as they cross the hall. Then the living room camera alerted shortly after. Again, nothing unusual. We have kids, so we set the cameras up in the family areas to keep an eye on them when they play video games and such. They come in handy when the kids get into arguments or try lying to us. They also allow us to speak to them if we run errands and leave them home alone as they're older. So after taking notes of the alerts, I kept scrolling away, awaiting my wife to come upstairs to the bedroom. But 20 minutes pass, and she hadn't come up, and the motion alerts had stopped. The feeling you get when someone is in your house, well, that feeling was gone. I listened closely but couldn't hear anything. "Babe?" I called towards the stairs, but received no reply. I got off the bed and started down the steps, calling for her as I went, but there was no reply. I checked all the rooms and was puzzled that she wasn't there. I knew for certain that I had heard her and definitely felt her presence in the house. I stepped outside to see if she had run back to the car for something, but her car wasn't there. Now I was really puzzled, but I eventually arrived at the conclusion that she had forgotten something and had run back to town. I thought it was strange that she didn't come up and say anything, but maybe she had thought I was napping. I made my way back up the stairs and decided I would give her a call. I called her cell phone, and when she picked up, I asked her where she'd gone. She said she was still out running errands. "So why didn't you come up and see me when you stopped a minute ago?" I asked. "What do you mean? I've been gone for a few hours." "What?" I reply. "You were down there for like 10 minutes. I heard you come in and carry bags. There was a motion alert and everything. I swore it was you. Who the hell would have come in?" There was a pause as we both considered this. She started to get worried and said that I should check the cameras. I agreed and told her I'd call her back shortly. Now my heart was pounding a little, but who the hell came into my home, and why did they walk in then leave? Had they taken anything? Was this the first time? Were my children safe here? Nervously, I pulled up our motion cameras on my phone and started to scroll through the kitchen footage just before I'd walked down the steps. I pressed play on the recording and waited. I then heard a slam, a few knocking sounds like someone was really coming inside. Then the grocery bag noise started. Now my heart was really pounding. Someone had definitely come inside and I was about to watch them stroll through my home. As I leaned in closer to the screen, a dark shadow suddenly loomed into view and crossed my entry hallway past the kitchen. I could make it out plain as day. As it passed, I was in complete disbelief. What the hell was that? The camera was slightly distorted from it. It didn't really have a shape that was recognizable. It was just a shadowy, shapeless cloud. I switched to the living room camera and played it again. Same noise, only this time I watched in full view as the shadow came from the hallway into the center of the living room. Then the entire room went dim on the camera. This was mid-afternoon. Were the cameras messing up? No. I had heard and felt something was in my home. I have been here 10 years and never been wrong. What was this? The scariest part? Just as I came down the stairs, on the recording, everything goes bright. It lit up again like normal. It was like a sunny day when a dark cloud rolls over and your whole room goes dim. Only there was not a cloud in the sky that day. I've never been more terrified in my life as I was sitting in the house alone, watching the footage of me walking down the stairs towards whatever the hell it was that I saw. I watched it over and over in disbelief. I knew I heard someone walk in my house. I felt them. There was no question in my mind that my wife had come home. Only she had not. It was just noises and a strange shadow. I have never once been too afraid of doors moving, strange noises, or thought someone was in my home when there was no one there. I've always just been able to tell when someone comes into my home from the familiar sounds and feeling. In fact, it never happened since. I called my mum and I was so freaked out. I explained what happened and showed the footage. She shrugged it off, as did my wife. In hindsight, I guess it wasn't really much to see. Some noises and a strange shadow. Easily explained away with logic when you didn't have the feeling of knowing someone was there to accompany it. But to me, it was the most terrifying experience and closest encounter I've had to anything supernatural. I don't believe in ghosts, I never really have, but I know something or someone was in my house that day. I worked in Disneyland a while back, at the stores in California Adventure after Buena Vista Street opened. One night I was cleaning the shelves in trolley treats when the locked automatic doors just opened. Now I normally wouldn't think of anything at all, but two fellow cast members behind me checking out registers just stopped and stared. I asked, "Did those just open on their own?" They both nodded. I shrugged and continued my work, and 10 minutes later it did it again, but this time I was alone. I got down and checked the door, but it wouldn't even open for me. So no idea what caused it that time. I mentioned this event to a lead who told me that the whole trolley treat side and the old Burbank ice cream shop were haunted by a little girl who died in the parking lot back when DCA wasn't even a dream. She apparently likes messing with the boys and would tease male leads closing up by running up and down the aisles late at night. My parents are working from home, and I just quit my full-time job because I start school full-time in the next few weeks. I woke up at around 10:30 this morning and got up to check what my parents were up to. As this was during COVID time, they were both working from home. My father was out, but my mother was working in the table we have in the dining room, so I sat on the chair across from her and spoke to her for a bit. I was just starting to scroll through my TikToks when all of a sudden everything around my phone was covered in what appeared to be a giant white light. Not someone flashing headlights at our house, and even if they did, the sun is shining so bright it wouldn't make that much of a difference. I immediately looked up at my mum, and we were both giving each other this "what the actual hell" look, and soon after, we were saying it. This was very bright. Not a flash or anything a phone could make. It looked to have immense energy behind it, almost like a concentrated lightning strike in the room. I have no idea what happened, and the internet isn't giving me any answers, other than my eyes have something wrong, which I know is fake, since both my mum and I saw the same thing. I'd love to hear if anyone has any explanations for this bizarre paranormal phenomena we both witnessed. I was a ride operator at a local theme park, and one night while closing up a ride, one of my co-workers went down to shut the door to the queue. I saw there was a kid with a hat and striped shirt through the security cameras running through the line. I called my co-worker over the loudspeaker to let him know that there was one kid left in the queue. He searched all over and didn't spot anyone. There was a point on the security camera that my co-worker was directly near the kid, but he said he didn't see anyone, and eventually the kid never popped up on the camera again, and there was no sign of him leaving. I'm thankful it happened to me my last week working there. Hey guys, it's Mort here, and thank you so much for listening. I do hope that you enjoyed tonight's collection of tales. If you did, you can let me know in the comments down below. They are very much appreciated, probably more than you expect. I'd like to extend a special thank you to my members and patrons who contribute small amounts of money every month to keep the channel running and get some fancy perks for doing so, like the credits, now, and a bunch of other stuff you can find out about by following the links in the description. But that's it from me. You can find some links to other videos on screen, but until then, stay awesome. I'll see you in the next one.